Herodian Book 3, Section 1. And this is going to start with where we left off in Book 2. And namely, that is that we are talking about the year of the 5 emperors. And we just had finished the last book with Severus being proclaimed sole emperor. And the people in Rome loved Severus. And they accepted that he's emperor now. But we have a little bit of a problem because Niger is still in Antioch and he is saying that he's the emperor. And so now who's the real emperor? Is it Emperor Niger, who declared he was emperor first, but dilly-dallied and didn't get to Rome first in time to oust the imposter? Or is Severus emperor? So we have a little bit of rivalry. And Julianus, or we could say Julianus, is overthrown, and that is where we're picking up after the death of Pertinax and all of this crazy stuff having taken place. So that is my introduction. Now, Book 3, Section 1. In the previous book, a description was given of the death of Pertinax, the overthrow of Julianus, Severus's arrival in Rome, and the departure of his expedition against Niger. When Niger received the totally unexpected news that Severus had taken Rome, where he had been hailed as emperor by the Senate and was now leading a combined force of the whole Illyrian army and a second land and navy force, he was thrown into a state of complete panic. Messages were dispatched to the governors of the various provinces, instructing them to guard all points of entry and the ports. Letters were also sent to the kings of Parthia and Armenia and Hatra requesting alliances. The Armenian king replied that he could not make an alliance with either side because if Severus attacked him at this moment, he would be enough for him to protect his own territory. The Parthian king informed Niger that he would send out an order to his satraps to muster their forces. This was the practice whenever a levy was needed in the absence of a paid standing army. Aid from Hatra consisted of a troop of archers sent by King Barsamius, the country's ruler. The rest of his army, Niger assembled from the military camps of the east. A large number of the lower class in Antioch, particularly the young men who were unthinking, enthusiastic supporters of Niger, joined the army really on the impulse rather than because of their experience. Niger issued orders that the passes and heights of the Tavrus mountains should be barricaded with strong walls and fortifications, since he believed that this inaccessible range was an important barrier along the eastern routes. The Tavrus range lies between Cappadocia and Cilicia, dividing the northern from the eastern territories, or from the eastern peoples. Niger also sent an army in advance to capture Byzantium, the largest and most prosperous town of its day in Thrace. With a flourishing population and great wealth, situated at the narrowest point of the straits of the Propontis, the city used to benefit enormously from ships, dues, and fishing. It also possessed a lot of rich land, and from these two elements made a great deal of profit. Because it was so powerful, Niger was anxious to be the first into the city, particularly since he hoped to block the crossing at the straits of Europe to Asia. An enormous strong wall surrounded the city, constructed out of millstone hewn into blocks and fitted together with such close mortises that one might think it was carved from a single block of stone rather than being joined. Even when one sees the ruins of the wall as they are today, one has to admire the skill of the first builders and the power of those who later destroyed it. In this way, Niger made provision for his side with great foresight and regard for safety, or so he thought. Section 2. Severus, for his part, made the maximum possible speed with his army without allowing time for slacking off or rest. When he heard that Byzantium had fallen and aware of its superb fortifications, he instructed his army to cross to Cyzicus. Aemilianus, governor of Asia, who had been commissioned by Niger to plan the defenses as military commander, received the information that Severus's army was making for the area of Cyzicus, and so directed his own attention there at the head of a combined force of his own locally levied troops and the soldiers dispatched by Niger. As the two armies made contact, there were some fierce battles fought in the region. Severus's army proved to be superior and completely routed the soldiers of Niger with heavy casualties. The hopes of the eastern forces were shattered at a single blow, and the confidence of the Illyrians grew. Some sources suggest that from the very start, Niger's cause was lost because it had been betrayed by Aemilianus. Two allegations are made about his motives. One is that he was jealous of Niger and so plotted against him because he was annoyed, it is said, that his successor as governor of Syria was likely to become his superior as emperor and master. Other sources say that Aemilianus was persuaded to take this action by his children, who sent him letters begging him to consider their safety. Severus had found them in Rome and was keeping them prisoners, a device that Severus made use of with great foresight. It had been a practice of Commodus to hold as hostages the children of the governors of the provinces as guarantees of their loyal support. Aware of this practice, when he was saluted as emperor in Julianus's lifetime, Severus straightway set off secretly and showed concern to have his children smuggled out of Rome, so that they did not fall into the hands of a rival. But as soon as he himself arrived in Rome, he seized all the children of the governors and those who held any position in the East and throughout Asia. They were taken into custody at court so that the governors might be induced by their anxiety for their children's safety to betray Niger's cause, or if they remained loyal to Niger, Severus would have a weapon to harm them through seizure of their children before they could harm him. After the defeat at Cyzicus, Niger's forces broke and fled as quickly as they could to various destinations. Some made for foothills of Armenia, others for the territory of Galatia and Asia, in an attempt to cross the Taurus Mountains before the enemy and have the protection of the fortifications there. Severus's army marched through the territory of Cyzicus and forged on into the adjacent province of Bithynia. When news of Severus's victory spread, its immediate effect was to cause an outbreak of civil strife and factional politics in the cities of all the eastern provinces. Not really because of partisanship for or against one of the warring emperors, so much as jealous intercity rivalry, and because of the slaughter and destruction of their compatriots. This continual intercity struggle and the desire to ruin a rival who seems to have grown too powerful is a long-standing weakness of the Greeks and sapped the strength of the Greeks. But as their organizations grew feebler and were mutually destructive, they fell easy victims to Macedonian dominion and Roman enslavement. This same disease of jealous envy has been transmitted to the cities that have prospered right up to the present day. Straight after the Battle of Cyzicus, the city of Nicomedia and in Bithynia went over to Severus and sent envoys to him, welcoming his army and offering their full cooperation. The people of Nicaea, by contrast, because of their rivalry with Nicomedia, joined the other side by opening their gates to Niger's army and taking in any fugitives that came their way, as well as the garrison that Niger sent for Bithynia. The two cities were like army camps and provided the bases from which forces clashed. A fierce battle developed in which the supporters of Severus won a decisive victory. The survivors of this battle, too, fled to the passes of the Taurus Mountains, where they set up a blockade of fortifications for their defense. Niger left a garrison which he thought sufficient to man the defenses, and himself hurried off to Antioch to raise troops and money.